Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a February plus January monthly book wrap up. I guess you would call it a 2-month book wrap up. I don't know. I had to put them together because I don't read that quick. I read about like a book a week, so I thought I would just combine them, and a lot of the books that I read since the start of the year have been really good, really enjoyable, so I kind of wanted to share them. So here are all the books that I read this January and February. So starting off with Every Last Secret by A.R. Torr. This one is I would say like a domestic thriller, I guess you would call it, psychological thriller. So basically it is about a husband and wife who move into a new town and they befriend their neighbors next door who happen to be very rich, and also happens to be the woman's boss who lives next door. So she starts working for his company, they become friends, they start spending a lot of time together, and she does kind of start getting feelings for her boss slash neighbor slash now her new friend's husband. I really enjoyed the first 70% of this book. It was definitely a page turner. I was hooked off the bat and I was intrigued. I wanted to know what was going to happen. And then nearing the end, it fell a little bit flat. I think it's because it became a little bit predictable and there wasn't enough of a plot twist. There was like kind of one thing, but with a thriller, I feel like I always want a little bit more, like either a double one or a really unexpected plot twist. Along with the ending falling a little bit flat, I feel like the epilogue also threw me off because the characters seemed to be acting really outside of their characteristics and not like how they were throughout the whole book. I really did enjoy this book. I think I would give it a 3.75 stars. I think it would have gotten the 4 stars if the ending had been a little bit different, but I did really like the writing. I like the story, and as you'll see, I did read another one by this author because I enjoyed it that much. The next book that I read was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. So this is a young adult romance book. It is essentially about Mallory, who meets the top chess player in the world. She's also dealing with the loss of her dad and taking care of her family. At first, it was a little bit hard to get into this book. I feel like it was really geared towards YA, so it was very Gen Z, and there was a lot of talk about TikTok, although I guess I am a young adult, so maybe it is geared towards me, I don't know. But at first I wasn't enjoying it that much, and then I got a bit more into it and it was kind of giving like Queen's Gambit vibes but young adult, and I ended up enjoying it. There were some scenes that didn't seem so YA, kind of like steamy scenes, I guess, that made me a little bit like uncomfortable, but they weren't explicit, so I guess that's why it's YA. I guess they also are 20 in the book, so it's not that weird, but it did throw me off a little bit. All in all, I did enjoy this book. I think I would give it a 3 out of 5. My favorite part was the chess aspect, and I think the romance kind of fell in the back burner for me. Then we have Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, aka the villain origin story for President Snow, aka Coriolanus. This book, I've talked about it in another video a little bit. This, I feel like, I honestly can't even rate it because here's the situation. I watched the movie, and then after I watched the movie I was like, okay, I should probably read the book. Problem is, I read the book like right after I watched the movie, like a week later, and while I was reading the book it was good, but I felt like I was reading the movie, which, yeah, obviously the movie was based off the book, but because I saw the movie first, it definitely impacted how I read the book, how I imagined the characters for sure. All I could see was the movie scenes, and I wish that I had read the book first and then saw the movie, because that's something you can never get back, is how you would have imagined the characters and the scenes if you had not seen the movie. Also, one of the main reasons why I wanted to read the book was because a lot of people were saying you get more of Coriolanus's inner monologue and you kind of see him becoming this evil villain throughout the story, more so than in the movie. But honestly, I didn't feel that throughout the book. I think the book was done really well. There were definitely moments where I kind of almost empathized with him, and I think that's what Suzanne Collins was trying to get at. Basically, just get to see both the nurture and the nature side and how it shapes him into becoming this villain that we see later in the Hunger Games trilogy, and I did think that was really interesting. I'm glad she wrote the book, and I think I would give it a 3 out of 5, but honestly I don't even know if my rating should be valid because the movie kind of just threw everything off for me, and yeah, I don't know, but I think I would give it a 3 out of 5. Next, I read Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, which is the book after A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and Holly Jackson does not disappoint. I feel like with every book she writes, I'm engaged throughout the whole thing. I want to know what's going to happen, and I'm always surprised at the end. There's always multiple twists going on that even if you think you know what's going to happen, you don't really. In this book, Pip gets sucked into another mystery, basically. Her friend's older brother goes missing and she wants to try to find out what happened to him. She also does have her podcast now, which makes the whole situation more public. But one of my favorite things about this book was just getting to see Ravi and Pip's relationship kind of grow. I feel like they are a really cute couple, so I enjoyed reading about that. What can I say? I love Holly Jackson. She does it again, and she's releasing another book this year. I can't remember what it's called. Something about Rachel Price or something? I don't know. But I definitely want to read it. 100% must read. I think I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. Pretty sure. Maybe a 5. Maybe 4.5. I think 4.5 or like 4.75 out of 5. We're close to the 5. Next, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by B.E. Squab. Essentially, the story follows Addie, who kind of makes a deal with the devil, I guess you would say, and she becomes forgotten. She stops aging, and the story follows her throughout the past like 300 years she's lived, jumps from present to past points in her life. And in the present, she finally meets someone who remembers her. This book, I really loved the idea and the whole premise of the book itself. I also really loved the writing. It was written really well and really beautifully. But I feel like throughout the book, I was getting a little bit bored. And I don't think that's something about the book. I think that was kind of like a problem with me and what I personally enjoy. As I said, it was really well written, so I think it was a more me problem. I did like the ending. I think it was good and satisfying and it made sense with the story. Overall, I would give it like a 3.75 probably, because it is written so well and it is a good book. It was just not keeping me fully engaged. And again, I think that's a me problem. Then I read Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. This one is about Emmy, who finds out that her first love wrote a book about her, and she hasn't talked to him in about a decade. Basically, it goes back and forth through us like reading the book that he has written about her and through the present timeline. I was loving this book at the beginning. I was eating it right up. I loved the flashbacks to when they were younger and the story about their first love. Then halfway through, this book took a turn for me, and I think it is because mainly I did not like the present version of the love interest. So his name is Jason, and I feel like in the present he did not fit the same character he was in the past, and he was kind of annoying and kind of like a douche. I was also kind of not feeling the ending. Basically, throughout the book, you're waiting for her to finish reading the book that he wrote about her. I feel like it was built up a lot. We were waiting and waiting and waiting and wanting her to finish the book, like something amazing was gonna happen, and it turned out to be kind of anticlimactic. There were definitely some unanswered questions. The book read like a YA novel almost, which I kind of enjoyed, honestly. I think it is just because there were so many flashbacks and a lot of it was in the past as their teenage self, so it kind of read like a YA. I would rate this one 3.5 out of 5, unfortunately. At the beginning, I felt so strongly about it. I thought it was going to be definitely a 4-star or a 4.5 star, but as I said, the middle took a turn and that's where it lost me a little bit. Next came Only If You're Lucky by Stacey Willingham. I will say right off the bat from reading this book, I wasn't as intrigued as I usually am with a typical thriller, and I also did find myself starting to think about other things while I was reading this book, and my mind was kind of wandering. Basically, this book is set in a college town, and the main character moves in with a girl and these two other girls that she barely knows but lived on her floor in first year, and they move into a house beside a frat house, and it's kind of more just like college life and college vibes, a lot of drinking, going out, and then there is a little bit of a murderous twist. It did get a little bit more interesting towards the end. Everything was explained in the end, and rather than being a big like plot twist, it was kind of more like untangling everything that had happened and seeing how everything intertwined. So I think the ending was what pulled it up for me, but the beginning was a little bit slow. But since it was a thriller, I feel like I typically would rate those pretty high, and this one kind of left me a little bit bored and it was a little bit slower, so I would give it a 3 out of 5, but by no means was it a bad book. Okay, next I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I had heard really good things about this book, so I was super excited. It is essentially about Millie, who is an ex-con and gets a job working as a housemaid for a seemingly crazy boss who is also quite wealthy. This book was definitely addicting. It was a quick read that will have you hooked from the beginning. If you're in a reading slump, I would 10 out of 10 recommend this for that. I'm also super excited to read the second one. I think I'm rating this one a 4.5 out of 5, but I'm gonna brew on it a little longer. It could go up. I could see it being almost a 5 out of 5, but we're gonna see. As you can see, I was 100% on a thriller kick because the next book I read was The Good Lie by A.R. Torr. So as I said, I really enjoyed the first book and the way she writes, so I thought I would give this one a try as well. So this book mainly follows Gwen, who is a psychiatrist who treats people who have violent impulses and thoughts. At the same time, there is a serial killer whose latest almost victim has escaped and comes back, and everyone's kind of trying to figure out how this has all happened. It also follows the father of one of the past serial killer victims, and you get to see kind of how all of these intertwine. I will say that I really enjoyed the psychological aspect in that she was an actual psychiatrist and you kind of got a little bit of psychology in there. I also appreciated how the book wasn't drawn out, so it was pretty short. I honestly didn't really see the end coming, which is kind of weird because I feel like it could be predictable, but I guess I just didn't put it together. And I think it made sense in the end. The twists were pretty good. I would give this one a 4 out of 5. Lastly, we have Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. And as you see, I had to take a break from those thrillers because it was getting dark and I needed a little change. So this one, I guess, would be just like a fiction. I don't know if it's considered like contemporary fiction. I'm not quite sure. It basically follows multiple people's storylines and you see how they intertwine and connect in the end and throughout the book. And one of the main characters is Tova, who is, I believe, a 70-year-old lady, and she is dealing with a lot of grief in her life. We also get the perspective of an octopus, which is very interesting. I think the octopus perspective was one of my favorite parts of the book, actually. I liked how it broke the fourth wall, and the octopus was definitely like a witty and just interesting character to have a perspective from. Although it was predictable and maybe a little bit mundane in the things the characters were doing and just like what was going on in the story, I did enjoy it, and I just feel like there was in this one a lot of like a deeper meaning going on and a lot more you could like analyze and look into. I'm not sure what I would want to rate this one yet. I kind of just finished it, so I feel like it needs to sit a little bit longer in my mind, but I'm thinking maybe like a 4, I think. We'll see. I would give it a 4 for now. I'm not sure if it would go up or down, but as of now, a 4. Overall enjoyed, would recommend it. But definitely a little bit of a slower read. So that concludes my wrap up for January and February. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe we'll read some of the books. As I said at the beginning, a lot of these books were enjoyable and a lot of them were high up there. So I'm excited to continue reading some and finding some good books. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.